Hey, friends, welcome to episode 485 of the My 123 Cents podcast. This week, we are talking about the WWE Hall of Fame and probably talk some other Hall of Fames in general as we're going. Chad Smart once again joins me for this week's episode. And Chad, we have a little bit of experience with this as we've been to 10 WrestleManias and I think probably, 7 or 8 Hall of Fame ceremonies.
Yeah, I'm trying to think because I know last year we didn't do the Hall of Fame, not since they've added it to after the SmackDown
Mhm.
show. But I think
Well, that's the
that's the
only
only.
one.
I
Yeah,
think
that's
that's
the
the only
only
one we missed.
one. Because we were at 32 in Dallas.
Mhm.
That was the last one we went to, and that was the year Sting got inducted, right?
Yeah, the year Sting waited until the very end of the show to come out and be inducted. I don't know why he waited so long.
So,
Inside joke.
yeah, speaking of Sting, he is, as this show drops, has already had his last match. We are recording this on Saturday before the last match, so we'll probably throw some stuff out on social media this week. So be sure to check out the My123 Cents Facebook and Instagram pages as we talk about the Hall of Fame. And Chad, the Hall of Fame, the WWE Hall of Fame specifically, I know that it is polarizing for some fans because on one hand, people get butthurt when their favorites aren't in it, and then people get butthurt that there are certain people in it. And then even those in the industry, you hear some of them get snarky and say it doesn't mean anything, and then when they get that induction or when others get that induction, they talk about the honor that it is. So, from a fan's perspective, what are your impressions, opinions? This thing started back in 1993 after the death of Andre the Giant. I think that's kind of really what got people talking about the Hall of Fame. And then they did a few inductions kind of sporadically in the mid 90s, and then it kind of laid dormant until 2004. So, since 2004, we've had big inductions. It's a big ceremony before WrestleMania. So, what are your thoughts as a fan's perspective?
Well, I mean, it's interesting because there's also the Pro Wrestling Hall of Fame, and I don't know if that's part of the Cauliflower Alley or if they're separate,
I
but
think there's a,
okay. There are other things, and I think by WWE being the only major promotion for the majority of the time that they've been inducting people, it's kind of they're inducting people that had very little to do with WWE, in certain cases.
Mhm.
So I can see where that might rub fans the wrong way because it's like, well, if the Freebirds never wrestled in WWF, why are they in the WWE Hall of Fame?
Mhm.
But again, I don't. It's kind of like the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame when people get upset because someone who isn't rock and roll,
Yeah.
like right now, Mariah Carey is on the short list for nominees this year, and people are like, why is Mariah Carey going into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame? It's like it doesn't matter in that regard. It's like at least there's something that is acknowledging the contributions that these people put in to the
Sure.
sport. And I mean, I do think at some point WWE should build a physical location,
Yes. Yes.
and so that you can visit it and you can see the memorabilia that they usually put on display at WrestleMania Access or whatever they're calling it these days. Um, so yeah, I think it's a good thing. I think, and then we'll talk more about this, I'm sure, as we go on. I think the classes have been a little too big
Mhm.
for the most part because one, the time that the ceremonies take up, and two, you only have, again, if you're going with legitimate Hall of Fame contenders, and I'll bring up Coco Beware because I think he's one that a lot of people are upset. And nothing against Coco. I was a fan of the Birdman growing up, and I just found out this week that Frankie was his actual pet before
Oh, yeah.
coming into, and apparently had a very untimely death,
Hmm.
which you can look that up on your own if you want. But Coco, is he a Hall of Famer? Probably not. If you go on the merit of his career, is he a Hall of Famer based on the fact that people know who he is and he had kind of a memorable run in WWE? Sure. So, but you only have so many main event stars, and if
Right.
you're inducting 10 people every year, you're going to run out of people pretty soon.
Yeah, and I think that's where I agree with everything that you've said so far, as far as the physical building and seeing that memorabilia, like something that's permanent and not just for WrestleMania weekend or SummerSlam weekend.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that's one of the things that maybe fans get, uh, so uptight about is that there's not really any kind of criteria.
Yeah.
There's not I think with the NFL, and I don't know enough about sports, but I think with some of these other sports Hall of Fames, it's, you have to be retired or removed from the sport for X amount of years or
Mhm.
whatever it is. And then they probably have a rubric where they grade everyone's contributions and whatnot. But like you said, Coco Beware, the Bushwhackers. The Bushwhackers were obviously big territory guys. They were over in JCP before and Bill Watts before they came to the WWF as the Bushwhackers. They were wrestling as the Sheepherders and had great matches with the Fantastics and the Rock and Roll, all these other teams.
Mhm.
So in that WWE, WWF bubble, we maybe remember these superstars as kind of being over the top cartoony. I can remember Coco Beware wrestling as Coco Ware in
Mhm.
Mid South and uh, you know Memphis area
Memphis.
and world class with the PYTs with Norville
Mhm.
Austin. So but was all that Hall of Fame career material too? It is curious what WWE looks at because we went for years without like Bruno Sammartino being in there, but we know that there was this public rift. And so, but I hate
Mhm.
it when people say, well, you've got Drew Carey in there and not Lex Luger, which I get. And that's the other aspect of the Hall of Fame that I think
Mhm.
people find polarizing is the celebrity wing. And I think when I looked, I think there's only 10 celebrities in there. And I'm more offended that Drew Carey's in there and Cyndi Lauper isn't for the celebrity portion of the Hall of Fame because I feel like without her involvement, or at least
Mhm.
I feel like she really helped bridge the gap from the whole rock and wrestling connection, in my opinion. But and maybe she doesn't want to be in the Hall of Fame, and that's why she's not. But
Yeah,
I
and that's the big issue is we as fans, again, because we read things on the internet, we think we know the ins and outs, and it's like, it may be, they WWE. I would guess, and I don't want to say for certain because I would then be going against everything that I'm saying right now, but I would hope that there have been, conversations with Cyndi Lauper about going in, and it may be she doesn't want to go in. It may be, the timing doesn't work with her schedule. Who knows? I just, given, like you said, the fact that she was the big celebrity for WrestleMania 1,
hmm
why wouldn't she go in? I mean, granted, Liberace's not in either, but there's probably, if unless he goes in posthumously.
yeah. Well, and well, before we started recording, we said we're not going to sit here and talk about everybody that should be and who
Mm.
is shouldn't be. So, but we
Alice Cooper.
from time to time throw in some names that fit in, and I think that two other names that people get all uptight about are Elizabeth and Owen Hart, whose families have said, especially Owen Hart's family has been very vocal about him.
Mm-hmm.
And when I say family, I'm talking his wife and children, not Brett and the other brothers. I think they would be for it, but um, so we as fans forget that, or like you said, don't know the ins and outs and what those conversations are looking like. Um, and then we have the handful that are in or that are maybe kind of not acknowledged anymore by WWE being in the Hall of Fame. Hulk Hogan went through that phase for a little bit. Jimmy Snuka is not, and I actually had a bit of an argument on YouTube with somebody about
Mm-hmm.
this. Jimmy Snuka is not listed on the WWE Hall of Fame page anymore, and we know that he
Mm-hmm.
had some legal issues towards the end of his life, stemming from an incident in the early '80s. Um, Sonny is in prison right now, and I have not checked to see if they have removed her from the Hall of Fame status. They don't put out like a public announcement about these things. I think they just kind of disappear from the website, and I feel like there are others that may fall into that category, or those that will become taboo and not inducted. Chris Benoit's name comes up every year as being someone, some fans, and I don't know if they're just being trolls, but
Mm-hmm.
they are pushing that Benoit go in. I think Vince McMahon has landed in that territory where I don't think we'll ever see him go into the Hall of Fame, which to me is bizarre. on one hand, but then obviously understandable if the allegations that are against him right now turn out to be true. And even if they're not true, I think there's enough of a stain there right now
Mhm.
that it'd be hard to overcome that from a public relations, and especially when you're a publicly traded company perspective.
Yeah, and there's the rumor as well that Vince never liked being mentioned at the Hall of Fames, and so unless things changed after he was gone, after he, without everything that has gone on right now, if he had left WWE on his own,
Mm-hmm.
then maybe he would have gone in, at some point. But I think, again, from what I've read, and so this is all speculation, is that if he went in, it would be after his death. It would be like his father going in because, even though I think personally McMahon is a megalomaniac and would love the attention, for some reason, when it comes to the Hall of Fame, he doesn't want, you know, to acknowledge himself. He just wants the focus on the wrestlers.
Yeah, the superstars, as he would say.
Sorry, yes, the
Um,
superstars.
so
Yes.
let's talk about time as far as
Mhm.
someone, as of this recording, and again, we're recording on March 2nd. There have been no announcements. There's been some speculation. There have been some buzz. One of the top leaders right now is Bray Wyatt, who passed away last summer. Um, the first year that we went was the first WrestleMania that after Eddie Guerrero's death, and he was inducted. I think he might have been or maybe Bret Hart was I always say main event, like the last one to be inducted. But Eddie Guerrero was posthumously inducted, um, and right after, and we've talked about that. Edge went in right after he announced his retirement. The year after that, Shawn Michaels went in right after he retired. Ric Flair went in technically still as an active wrestler. Rey Mysterio is still an active wrestler. So I guess what I'm getting at is, should an active wrestler be inducted? And then what, if not, how long after they retire or pass away should there be that time that they go in?
Yeah. Yeah. Because I think Terry Funk went in about a year after his fourth retirement. Um, Now, for me personally, I don't like when in the situation of Eddie Guerrero, or I guess even if you want to go back to the first ceremony, like you mentioned, they
Yeah,
started it after Andre passed away.
yeah.
And granted, I think Andre is different because he hadn't wrestled regularly. He was more of done with his career by that time. But yeah, I am not a fan of putting them in right after they pass away because to me that just seems like exploitation. Like you're just exploiting the emotion of the passing.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and yeah, and I'm also not a fan of someone who is, still wrestling. Like in the case of Rey Mysterio, I do think there should be some time frame from maybe not full retirement because again, it's wrestling. Retirement is a maybe prospect, but
Right.
I do think, I believe the NFL and Major League Baseball both have a 5-year rule
Yeah.
after that. But so I would put it in that same regard where, again, not necessarily retirement, but 5 years after slowing down your career
Mm-hmm.
and maybe not being a full-time performer because yeah, it is odd, when Ray's out there or when Edge was still in WWF and then it'd be like WWE Hall of Famer, so
Mm-hmm.
and so. And it's like, I don't know. It's just something weird that acknowledgement should be for someone whose career is, I mean, they'll, in all sports, they refer to people as a, future Hall of Famer when they're in their career, but to actually be a Hall of Famer, I think there needs to be some separation. But again, as I said earlier, I think WWE has put so many people into the Hall of Fame that you want, especially when the Hall of Fame was its separate show. Now coming after SmackDown, it's like people are going to be there anyway. But if you're selling just a Hall of Fame show, you need that marquee name to sell tickets.
Absolutely.
Um, and unfortunately, yeah, with everybody that's gone in, there's probably only a handful of top names that you can think of that um, that are yet to go in.
Yeah, I agree with you partially on your opinion, and I think that the active wrestlers, I agree. I don't think that should happen. Ric Flair probably the only exception to that rule because I think everybody assumed or figured that the next day he was going to lose that retirement match and be done, and it was a great weekend send off. Could they have waited and inducted him a little later? Probably, but the way Flair was, he was wrestling again about what 2 years later was wrestling in
Mhm.
TNA, so that wouldn't have necessarily worked out. As far as the deaths and the posthumous inductions go, I don't have a problem with them doing it on the heels of said performer's death. Eddie Guerrero, Bray Wyatt, because I think that wrestling fans are very passionate about, and I don't follow other sports or other walks of life like I do wrestling. So I'm speaking from that perspective only. But when someone, a wrestler dies, um, or a celebrity for that matter, we look for ways, or a lot of people look for ways, fans look for ways to memorialize or to honor, remember, pay their tributes, pay their respects. And I think with the Hall of Fame, it does that. It accomplishes that. And yeah, I could see where you would find it. Some people may say, well, that's being exploited because then you're selling T-shirts or action figures or programs or
Well,
whatever it is that.
and real quick, just to interject, I think part of that too is the way that the Eddie Guerrero induction was, where the whole story with that WrestleMania 2 was Ray, doing everything for Eddie and winning the title, and that to me was just very exploitive of the
Mhm.
situation. Now, with if Bray goes in this year, they haven't really mentioned Bray since his passing, so it's not like. And granted, the only person still on the roster associated with Bray is Braun Strowman, and he's been out injured. So
Yeah,
if he comes back and they start playing up the Bray connection, my opinion might change. But they've kind of let Bray just kind of pass. No bad wording on my part here, but pass away. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I know what you're saying there, and I think also one of the behind the scenes things that WWE certainly hasn't bragged about it, but it has been reported is that proceeds or maybe it's all of it that
Mhm.
comes in from sales of Bray Wyatt merchandise goes to Bray's family because he had 4 young children. And so, in that regard, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. Well, it's definitely not a bad thing. I think that you would agree with that too. Um, but then it comes down to what happens in the future. Honoring and remembering those Hall of Famers. Like the Warrior, he died 48 hours after he was inducted into the Hall of Fame, and it was my understanding that there was going to be um, a line of projects that he was going to be part of and whatnot, and so it becomes kind of it's sad I think for fans because we want to get that closure. We want to see Warrior coming back and doing the Hall of Fame was one part of that closure process,
Mhm.
but then seeing him in video games and being a part of those documentaries that they were producing at the time, maybe he comes out, before SummerSlam and runs around and clotheslines Heath Slater or whatever it
Mhm.
is. So we miss out on those moments, and I'm kind of going off on a whole nother tangent here, but I wouldn't be surprised if Bray goes in this year. It would be interesting. Um, I think Bray Wyatt is one of those superstars who, uh, you have the father son connection with Mike Rotundo,
Mhm.
who is not in the Hall of Fame yet, and so it'd be one of the probably first instances where the child goes in before the parent. I know Bret Hart went in before Stu Hart did, but it's interesting when you kind of break down and look at those different statistics or whatever.
Mhm.
We've talked before too about the posthumous inductions, the perception that Vince doesn't want to have out there. But you know, we saw. I always forget. I think it was Mad Dog Vachon went in and he came out in his wheelchair.
Mhm.
And there's speculation that that's why they haven't done with Lex Luger because his inability. And Lex Luger was once this big awesome presence, and he's kind of in a wheelchair now,
Mhm.
and doesn't get around as well. And again, this is under the old regime, and it's alleged, of course. But
Mhm.
now, and I mentioned Mad Dog Vachon, Butcher Vachon just passed away over the weekend as well, or over the past couple of days. So, uh, what are your thoughts on the posthumous? And they did those legacy inductions there for a little bit,
Mhm.
where it was like 10 or 12 men and women who contributed to the business throughout the territories that have died.
Mhm.
And I know some people get offended with that because they're like, well, they deserve to have more than just a name mentioned in this whole ceremony.
Yeah, and I guess this is where perception again comes into play, where a lot of these legacy names, how well known are they to the current audience? And
Right.
and that's a big part. And not to get down on wrestling fans, but one of our problems that we've had with the ceremony itself is the lack of respect from the
Right.
fans. And so if you bring out a name that isn't known, are the fans going to be respectful, or are they going to, if it goes on for 5-10 minutes, are they going to be like, okay, again, going back to Dallas, is like, where is Sting? Where's the guy that I came to see? Why is this person out here talking?
Yeah.
I just want to get in. And so I can understand if it is more of a smaller name that is known more for a specific area,
Hmm.
of the country, and not as a broad name to put it in, especially, you know, um, but I do think, again, going back to what they've done with that of the last few years, is they put in too many names at one time, because then it becomes not, I don't want to say not as special, but it's not as memorable, because it's like, hey, remember when they did 15 people? And you're like, no, because again, they don't get a lot of mention on the weekly show leading up to the Hall of Fame, and then they just get a small blurb as a group, I believe, if I remember correctly, during the show. So I can understand a little bit of the opinion that it is kind of not as honorable, but but I agree. I mean, I think that's with any sport. If someone isn't well known, your current fans aren't going to want to sit there and you know take up time with, especially. And I know in recent years the Hall of Fame has put a time limit. I think mainly thanks to Mr. T, on how long, or Lita, on how long someone can speak, which I also don't fully agree with, because you're giving them the honor. Let them, say what they want to say. But again, not everyone needs to speak for 45 minutes, which again goes into stop inducting so many people, cut it
Right.
down to where people have time to speak. Yeah, I'm kind of rambling now too.
No.
Um, yeah, I think the legacy awards, I get it from a perspective, but again, you're dealing with people that are no longer with us. So, um, we were there for Gorgeous George, and his widow came out, or Boss Man and his family came out. It's like, at least with Eddie, when Eddie went in, it was I believe Vicky accepted, but it was Ray and Benoit that came out and inducted him. So you have like some Chavo, yeah. So you have some knowledge of the person speaking, and it's different than just this random person coming up and saying, "Oh, thanks for this award. My parent would have been
Right.
very honored to do this." So, yeah. And as far as Lex Luger goes, in the perception of him being in a wheelchair, I don't know. I hope that's not what's keeping him out,
Right.
because, and I don't know how well he is getting around without the wheelchair. Like, could he come out and stand? Um, and I'm trying to think of the timeline of when he had his injury. 'Cause, I went to Bound for Glory in 2013, 2012, 2013, I think it was, when Sting was inducted into the TNA Hall of Fame, and Lex Luger was there. And he wasn't in a wheelchair at that time. So
Yeah.
I don't know if he's gone down, if his health it was affected after that.
Mhm.
But you and I were talking about it, a week or two ago. I think Lex Luger, even if he's in a wheelchair, I think his attitude is
Oh,
something that should be commended because every interview that I've seen with him over the last couple of years is he's very positive. He's not a sad like, oh, woe is me. I mean, it's just like, hey,
yeah.
I'm still alive. I still have a life to live, and so I think that in itself would be a good message for the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely, he's kind of got the buzz this year too because he's been on the bump recently, and I think he has some sort of connection still with the company. So we may end up seeing Lex go in, and I think that would uh, be a good thing. Um, One of the names that I was looking to see what his status is because I know he wasn't like officially inducted, but Bruiser Brody is part of that legacy.
Hmm.
Which growing up in St. Louis and watching world class and going to wrestling at seeing wrestling at the Chase, Brody was a big name in St. Louis. So from that perspective, it does
Hmm.
kind of suck that he's part of the legacy, but he's still in. And this is where I'm kind of transitioning to
Hmm.
people get upset when a faction goes in. DX, for example,
Hmm.
they're going to be the example I'm going to use here. And then you see people complain, well, China should be in on her own, or the Four Horsemen went in. Well, Arn Anderson should be in on his own. Does that matter? And I'm asking you as a fan, because from my
Hmm.
perspective, if they're in the Hall of Fame, they're in the Hall of Fame.
Hall of
They
Fame.
have the ring, they have their name on the plaque, they're on the website. Eventually, when we get a physical location, which I think
Hmm.
someday we will,
In
they'll be
Dubai.
honored and respected there. So does it matter if it's China with Triple H and the Road Dogg and Billy Gunn, or does it matter if she's got her own display? To me, it does,
Hmm.
and not just her specifically. I'm talking Arn Anderson, Tully Blanchard, Barry Windham, any of those guys that when Stevie
Von
Ray,
Erichs.
the Von Erichs, they're in. They are Hall of Famers, and you can't take that away from them, whether it's with a group or on their own.
Yeah, I can understand why people would want an individual in, but and I think it depends on the person too. Like, how well was their solo career versus the faction?
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, using China, there is a case that she should be in by herself as well. However, as everything that we've discussed with situation, you know,
Mm-hmm.
there's probably a good reason why they don't want her,
Yeah.
why they haven't done her as her own person. And yeah, I'm with you. I think if you're in the Hall of Fame, you're in the Hall of Fame. You can't take that away from someone just because they're not in by themselves. So again, I think it's a case by case decision, but I have no problem with them going in. And you know, again, to use China, and maybe I'm beating a dead horse here, no pun intended. But if someone is no longer with us, going in as a faction then gives you people who at least were part of their career to expound on them
Sure.
instead of just being a nothing against a family member, but I think there's a difference in a fellow wrestler versus that's on the road with them 200 days a year versus the family member that isn't.
Yeah. What are your thoughts on? I found this interesting when we went to New Orleans for WrestleMania 30 uh, that year. Razor Ramon was inducted. When we were in Dallas, I think it was The Godfather was inducted, but in 2015 it was Kevin Nash, not Diesel, who was inducted.
Mm.
Um, I don't know, and there's probably been things said or discussed about this, but I find it interesting that in some cases it is the gimmick that goes in versus the man behind it. And I know Kevin
Mm.
Nash wrestled as Kevin Nash in WCW, but so when Kevin Nash goes in, does that encompass Diesel and Vinny Vegas and all these other characters? Or one day could Diesel also be inducted? And by that same token, Mick Foley, I think, is the one listed as the inductee. So could he go in as Dude Love, Mankind, and Cactus Jack as well? And I'm asking that kind of facetiously, but also,
Yeah.
you know, because it is weird. I find it the weirdest that Razor Ramon went in one year, and then the next year it was Scott Hall, or I'm sorry, it was Kevin Nash who went in. So, and I guess Scott Hall is now in as part of the
NWO.
NWO, but I don't know, and I don't know that needs an answer, but I just kind of
Yeah.
found that as
No,
a side note.
I think I'm trying to think of a good example here. I'm trying to think of someone whose real name I don't know offhand. Some gimmick wrestler who only wrestled as that one gimmick. I'm drawing a blank. So I'll try to think of something while I'm rambling. I don't like that Razor Ramon is in because I think it should have been Scott Hall
Yeah,
because in WCW he became Scott Hall. Scott Hall is the person, and you
mm-hmm.
induct him, and then acknowledge that he was Razor. And acknowledge that he was Diamond Stud before that, or you know, Starship Coyote or whatever is
Yeah,
name it. And I mean you don't highlight that as like, oh, Starship Coyote is in the Hall of Fame, but you just you know if you had a physical place with a placard detailing his career, you include that in there.
yeah, sure.
Whereas, because I mean, if Barry Darso ever got into the Hall of Fame, is he going in as Smash, Crusher Khrushchev, Payne Stewart, Blacktop Bully? When it comes to Ed Leslie, is he going in as Brutus Beefcake, Zodiac?
Well, he did go in as Brutus Beefcake. We know that.
Oh
So
yeah. So
yeah, that's a great.
yeah, I think you go in as. I think if your real name isn't something that is synonymous with your career, such as Foley, Hall, Nash, you go in as the gimmick that you are most popular, and maybe that's where Godfather is, because would you rather have Godfather or Papa Shango or Kama the Fighting Machine? I think the Godfather is what people would most associate with Charles Wright, right? And you're not going to pimp out, for bad wordplay, you're not going to pimp out Charles Wright as a Hall of Fame inductor. You're going to go with the character.
I mean, I would have liked to have seen Papa Shango come out and make the host's head ooze, the black ooze that he did to me back in the day. So, well, I want to talk about our first Hall of Fame, and I actually found this in my stuff. It is the coin, the collector's piece, and I don't have my glasses on, so I don't know if I'm holding this up right or not. This is the collector's piece that we got, being there for the very first time. It was neat because I felt like they had the old Slammy Award set with the big trophies, the giant sized trophies. It felt like, for the most part, it felt like a big deal, a night to honor. This is the year that Bret Hart went in, and Mean Gene, and Refrigerator Perry, Sensational Sherry, a handful of other. I think that was the year the Blackjacks went in because Bobby Heenan was there. So we dressed up. We had on shirt, tie, maybe even wore jackets. I don't remember. We went with our friend Jeremy, so we were all dressed up and ready to go because I think
at that
said something about the attire, right?
Yeah, on the tickets it said something. I want to say formal attire. I don't think it said formal attire, but it was like, there was a dress code in place.
And so, and for the most part, people were in that, but there were some that were in t-shirts and jeans and whatever. But like you said earlier, when Sherry was up there were people catcalling and chanting and making noises and stuff. And that's where I think sometimes too, and no, this is going to be disrespectful to wrestling fans, but sometimes we're assholes. And I think the Hall of Fame was still too new at that time that we were trying to differentiate. This is not a wrestling show. This is a ceremony. We're honoring men and women who contributed to the business, and it's a night to dress up and be nice. Tomorrow night at WrestleMania, be as loud as you want, be obnoxious, blow up your beach balls and bounce them around, do whatever. But I think that the fans eventually kind of got their way with that, and now and part of it was the development and growth of NXT to where now they do it on that Friday night after SmackDown.
Well, and the 2-day WrestleMania.
And of course, 2-day WrestleMania as well. because they're trying, it went from WrestleMania being on a Sunday to, then adding Hall of Fame, adding Access, NXT growing. Now it's 2 nights. So WrestleMania becomes a week instead of a weekend. So I get it from that perspective. So maybe the formalness of it has faded away. I personally kind of miss that. I did like going, and I feel like every year that we did go, the 9 years that we went, we never walked in a t-shirt and jeans. We dressed up and played the part, if you will, just to show respect, if nothing else.
Yeah, well, and I think you hit it on the head that fans seem to have a hard time separating show versus honorary ceremony or ceremony. It's not a Hall of Fame is not a Raw, SmackDown, NXT type show. It is, you are not there so much to be a participant as you are there to be a witness. And I would not be opposed, especially now that, like I said, with WrestleMania taking up 2 days and NXT being on Saturday afternoon and doing the SmackDown, Hall of Fame after SmackDown, which because of what we just said about the separation between show and, if you go in for a show and then all of a sudden it's the ceremony and you're like, after 2 hours of chanting for Roman and, The Rock or whatever, it's hard to then to go like, oh, okay, now we're going to be respectful. It's like, no, we're in mode with the WWE Network or Peacock or, if when they go to Netflix, whatever. I would not be opposed as to making that Thursday. And granted, this is probably all the wrestlers and employees of WWE will probably hate this idea because of the extra time, but making that Thursday just what they used to do in the early days of the Hall of Fame or the Slammies, just make it a WWE event, stream it on the network for the fans to be able to watch it.
Yeah.
And then that way you honor those people without having a crowd. But again, I know it also would not make money because you want to sell the tickets to the show. So, but in the early days, they would have the ceremony separate and then put the ceremony on the WrestleMania DVDs that they pumped out, which, no longer doing DVDs, but again, you have the network. So I think that from a fan perspective of wanting to watch it and not have to deal with audiences being jackasses, that would be my suggestion.
Yeah. Well, and it makes for a long night too when you do it after SmackDown, because there were years that we were at that Hall of Fame, that year in Orlando specifically, when The Rock and Ric Flair, between the two of them, Rock was inducting his grandpa and his father, and Flair was going in as as himself. I think between the two of them alone, it was 3 hours of speaking. It was an hour and a half, and I think Triple H at one point came out and a couple of times and tried to wrap Flair up, and and that's where you come into the I don't want to say conflict, but it's like you want to hear these stories. I mean, I was being entertained, but then I'm like thinking, well, and Flair went on last, of course, and it was after midnight by the time we got out of there, and I think those ceremonies started at 7 or 8 o'clock, so it was a long night, and does Hillbilly Jim need to talk for an hour, or like you said, Mr. T? I think they finally sent Kane out to escort Mr. T out, and I don't think Mr. T was in on the joke. So
no, and Lita, I believe, went on for a good 30 to 40 minutes, and same with Mick Foley in New York, which we missed the majority of his speech because he went on first, and we were getting over from Jersey from being at a show. But I think he spoke for around 45 minutes, and and again, that goes into the amount of people you're inducting, because now after SmackDown, I think they only did like 3 or 4 people last year, if I'm correct, if I remember.
I think it was 5 with the Warrior Award. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. But so you just gotta, again, it's that push and give. It's like, do you want to hear the stories, or do you want it to be succinct and get out of there in a timely fashion?
Yeah.
And especially, again, the employees that have to get up the next day and work again.
Right.
It's like,
it's a crazy weekend for sure.
Yeah.
Because we watched, I believe, if I remember correctly, we watched the ceremony last year because SmackDown is on Fox for right
Hmm.
now, but then I think it switched over and we watched on Peacock then the
Yeah.
Hall of Fame, right? Yeah, and like you said, that makes for a long night for production for the superstars because then they're wheeling and dealing the next day at I guess Access has kind of become not so much a thing, but
Mhm.
because there was nobody at the store that we went to that day, right?
When we were there, no, but I think they did do some
Yeah,
autograph sessions.
yeah,
Yeah, now and I know this year they've changed the name. And I can't remember what it's changed to, but I'm curious what it will be like. Um, once photos start coming out and people start tweeting about it.
mhm.
But yeah, it's an evolving situation, and again, I do think that give it another 10 years, will WrestleMania be an entire week? Because I mean, I guess right now they said that came out news that when SmackDown moves to um, USA next year, will stay on Fridays. Guessing Raw will stay on Mondays on Netflix, but um, yeah, it's who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see for sure. And we still, at this time, as we are recording, don't know who's going in. So, Chad, as we start to wrap things up, we talked about Lex Luger. I think we both agree he'd be on our short list of someone that's not in that definitely should be in. Who do you have? Give me one or two names, tag team, and and that's kind of the other thing is they've always had this template of main event, mid Carter, female tag team or faction, then manager or announcer, and then
Mm.
Warrior Award. That's kind of been
And celebrity. Yeah.
yeah, and celebrity. That's kind of been a template. So give me a name or two that we both agree. I think Cyndi Lauper would be our celebrity pick, but who should be in? There is talk of Paul Heyman this year, which again we talked about the active. They're in Philadelphia, so I think that's why people are talking Paul
Yeah.
Heyman. Do you think it has to be the year we were in Houston, the Von Erichs went in, which they probably would have been better going in when they were in Dallas. But
Mhm.
does geographical location matter, you think, when it comes to that going in? Because I don't need Paul Heyman to go in this year. I could wait until he is
Yeah.
retired or closer to being retired.
Yeah. And I believe when we were in Atlanta, the Freebirds went in that year,
No,
or
they
the
went in Dallas,
Armstrongs.
I think.
They were in Dallas. Yeah. Was the Armstrongs in? It was someone related in the
Yeah,
Georgia area, I
yeah.
remember. So I mean, I get why they do that, and I have no problems with it. Does Paul Heyman need to go in this year? I'm with you. I don't think he needs to, especially because if then he starts being referred to as Hall of Fame famer Paul Heyman on the show, whereas he is playing a kind of subservient role to
Yeah.
Roman, and I think that would like make him a little bit more. Um, I don't know what the word I'm looking for, but anyway, yeah, I don't think I could see some ECW connection though. Would how about would Sabu go in, or I mean, Tommy Dreamer is working with Impact, so I don't see him going in. I don't know what Bully Ray's situation is. If he's with Impact anymore, or if he's just doing the radio show.
I think he's
So
free. He's made some comments here lately too. So
okay, so yeah, would the Dudley Boys go in? I can see. I would not be surprised to see at least one ECW related
mhm.
star go in, and hopefully it is 911. Uh,
Wasn't
uh,
expecting.
yeah. I think the other big name that has been rumored and was supposed to go in prior, until COVID hit was Batista.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his schedule is. He's another one that would probably go in as soon as he can, but having a film career that is probably probably not the most successful, but in my opinion, he's the best wrestler turned actor out there right now. Um, so he would go in. I'm trying to think who else. Celebrity, like you said, if it's not Cyndi Lauper, for me, I keep waiting for Alice Cooper to go in.
Oh yeah.
And but then, if he goes in, you want Jake Roberts should be the one to induct him. Jake is still with AEW, which I'm sure Tony Khan would have no problem with Jake showing up. But and who knows? Like you said, with the new regime, can we get some crossover?
Hmm.
Trying to think who else would go in. Do you think the Rockers would go in with everything that Marty Jannetty has going on right now? Would this be a time to, as they say, give him his flowers?
Yeah, I don't know. I never really thought about the Rockers, but yeah, I definitely after I made a
Mm.
video on TikTok and on YouTube, and I said that the Rockers were a better tag team than the Rock and Roll Express, and there are a lot of people that agreed, and then the people that don't agree, man, they do not agree, and they are letting me know. So, but yeah, I could see at some point eventually the Rocket, and then that would make Shawn Michaels a three-time Hall of
Mhm.
Famer and the first to do that. So it'll be interesting to see because there are a handful that are in twice as a faction or a tag team, and then as their individuals. So I made a list a long time ago, and now I can't find it. So that's why I'm looking down at my phone. But
Well, and I would say, real quick too, because we mentioned Bray Wyatt. If they induct him, does he go in alone? Do you induct the Wyatt family? Do you
oh
induct Luke Harper as
yeah,
like a,
well, and that's those are good questions, and actually led me to another thought. I said we're getting ready to wrap up. We will wrap up here in a minute, but let me ask you this because eventually TNA started doing a Hall of Fame where they were, and you said you were at. I think you've been to at least one or two of those ceremonies.
the first one? Yeah.
First one. Uh, I like how they do it with one. I think this past year they did two with Mike Tenay and Don West, but
But
typically they do one inductee. I like that. I think we probably, with the depth of the WWE's goal here, need more than one. But do you see a time? What is the time? Because WCW had an ill-fated Hall of Fame there for a minute, and they kind of wandered away from it. Do you see AEW developing a Hall of Fame, and if so, how soon? They're about 5 years now into being a brand and a business. How soon should a company start a Hall of Fame?
yeah, TNA did theirs at the 10-year mark,
Okay.
um, which again, when I did it, I was skeptical of it. But after attending the ceremony, I fully understand why they did it because Sting was such an integral part to
Is that who
their
they
success.
inducted first? Was Sting?
Yeah.
Okay, I was trying to remember who they did. Okay, that makes.
And, um, I mean, I think AEW will, if they have longevity, will, get around to it because I think they will probably induct people that WWE may not. And, um, but I would go, I guess it goes back to what we were saying. Like a lot of their homegrown talent is still very young.
Yeah.
So, if you want to wait until they're at the end of their careers or, I would think 20 years would be the minimum to go. But I would, I would say probably around 10, 15, they might start making something. Although, again, with Sting retiring this year, could they do something either later this year or next year?
Hmm.
So it all depends on what Tony Khan has coked up.
Uh, when one of his big announcements was happening, it was right after I think Sting had announced he was going to retire.
Mm.
I thought Tony's big announcement was going to be that he was creating a Hall of Fame and Sting was going to be the first inductee. So I think like you said, it's a matter of time before it happens. And it, I guess the other thing before we do leave is Chris Jericho, Daniel Bryan, probably the two big names that I'm thinking of right now that are not in the WWE Hall of Fame that are actively Christian, that are actively
Mm.
with AEW right now. Do you see in a time when they do retire, or if I don't think they would induct them now as active wrestlers. Tony Schiavone, I'm putting him in the space as
No.
well. Um, do they ever get into the Hall of Fame, or is this a thing where after they've passed away, they get one of these legacy deals, or could you
Mm.
foresee a Daniel Bryan or a Chris Jericho going in to the Hall of Fame? Because I feel like they all still have cordial relationships, especially now with a new regime over at
Mm.
WWE. So could you see these guys going in someday, maybe when they're not associated with AEW, or will we see a time where there is kind of that agreement between the non-competitive side of, when I say non-competitive, I mean no in-ring action. I don't think
Mhm.
we're going to get a trade of, Britt Baker working the Royal Rumble, but could we get Daniel Bryan get inducted in the Hall of Fame while still being a coach behind the scenes at NXT or at AEW?
Well, I'm just waiting for a Britt Baker appearance on any AEW programming right now. Um, but no, I definitely think Jericho and Bryan, will be WWE Hall of Famers, and yeah, it will probably be after they're done with AEW. I don't see again. I think because if, as we mentioned earlier, if they're active, they don't need to go in anyway.
Yeah.
Christian, I think, should be in the Hall of Fame, but
Yeah.
would he go in as Christian, or would they induct Edge and Christian, even though Edge is already in? You know, yeah, but yeah, definitely after their careers are over, and I think Jericho's made comments that he would like to go back to WWE to finish out the career,
Mm.
and maybe he said that. If he said that, unless I'm just making it up, you know, he could change his mind at any time. Depends on which way the wind is blowing, but I don't see Jericho having maybe another 3 to 5 years in ring at most, because I mean he's 50, 51, 52 right now. Um, so I think he should be winding up, because as a 50-year-old or close to 50, it's all downhill from here.
It is, trust me.
Yeah. So, but definitely those guys should be in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope, because, really things ramped up with WWE Hall of Fame after they purchased WCW, and there
Mhm.
wasn't really that conflict. I know there were some times with TNA and Ric Flair, and I think there was a trade going on. At one point, they let
Mhm.
Christian go do something there and exchange for Flair to go into the Hall
Hall
of
of Fame
Fame
with the Horsemen.
Horsemen. So I know that there were some deals made back at that time, but yeah, this is really the first time where there's been multiple companies on TV with
Mhm.
talent, global talent, that you know could potentially be a conflict. But hopefully, it's not. But I understand where they want to kind of separate and whatever. But
Mhm.
any other thoughts on the Hall of Fame before we put a bow on this week's show?
I'm trying to think. I know there's a name that is just escaping me, and right now, you know, no, I got a thought. You ran down their list of criteria of who they normally put in. I still think, and I'm probably the only person who thinks this, there should be a Jobber Hall of Fame. Iron Mike Sharp should be the first inductee, but
Oh,
give
SD Jones. SD Jones.
is it? Oh no, SD isn't it? He inducted Tony Atlas when
Yeah,
we.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Um, but those are the guys that made your superstars look good,
Yeah.
and they had a role they played. It wasn't necessarily just like, if you're a baseball or basketball player and you're not good, and then you don't
Right.
stick around very long. These guys had their career because, as I say, they're a solid hand,
Yeah.
and I think give them some recognition as well.
You've just given me an idea, and we'll discuss it offline here. And if it works, we'll put it out there on the My 123 Cents Facebook page, and join the group as well. There's a private group. I had to make it private because we were getting spammed with all kinds of inappropriate stuff. So check it out. Search for My 123 Cents Facebook group. Mondo the monkey is the cover or the photo for that. So check it out. Request access, and I'll let you in as long as you're not posting crap about dick pills and pornography and the such. But Chad, it's been
No,
great.
that's why I got banned.
Yeah, exactly. That's what I'm saying. It's been great talking about the Hall of Fame, and
Yeah,
I love this time of year, and I can't wait to see who that first announcement is. It's got to be coming any day now, because we're what, 35
33.
days away from WrestleMania.
Yeah, getting close. So again, that gives me hope that it's going to be a smaller class.
Yeah.
But
Yeah, I agree. I agree. Well, friends, we want to hear what you think as well. Be sure to weigh in, subscribe to this show, whether on YouTube or on your favorite podcasting app, and give us your 123 cents on our 123 cents. Have a great week.